This is a special episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast recorded during our virtual LeaderCon mental fitness event a few months ago. We're so glad to share this with you as we talk about leading in a new way. We'll call it leading lightly. Are you ready? Let's get started. I told you you'd all join us here. I promised you, and that's exactly what happened. But now there's someone better looking sitting next to me. Man, I am so glad that you are all here with us. I'm going to introduce our guest and who's sitting here virtually next to me, smiling, and then we're going to dive in. Her name is Jody Michael. She's the CEO of Jody Michael Associates, a premier coaching company specializing in executive coaching, leadership development, and career coaching. She is recognized as one of the top 4% of coaches worldwide and is credentialed as a master certified coach, a board certified coach, a University of Chicago trained psychotherapist, and a licensed clinical social worker. All of that means, everybody, she's smarter than me. It also means that she brings a rare combination of having worked in industry as well. She's been a global SVP. Brings the theoretical knowledge as well as extensive field experience. She's coached some of the nation's top performing leaders and teams across a variety of industries and organizations. Among her clients are more than 120 senior executives across 18 Fortune 100 companies. She knows what she's talking about. She's a keynote speaker, and perhaps the biggest reason why she's here today, she's author of this book, Leading Lightly. Lower your stress, think with clarity, and lead with ease. She's been in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, Forbes, lots of other places. She's been on MSNBC, CNN, The Today Show, and NPR. Jody, that's on my list, being on the Today Show. But that's for another day. I bet there was a little stress that morning.
Oh, absolutely. I'm an introvert, Kevin. So this is not my most fun thing to do. I like just being doing the work one-on-one.
Well, we're so glad that you've chosen to join us today. And just so you know, not to put any more stress on you as an introvert, but we've got people that I counted from at least 6 countries that are with us today, including someone for whom it is 10:35 p.m. So
Wow.
just no stress.
That's fantastic.
No stress, no worries. Hey,
Yeah.
In this book, Leading Lightly, you can see that I've got notes up here. What you talk very specifically about mental fitness. And so I'd like we just start by you defining mental fitness from your perspective.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me, inviting me today, Kevin. My definition of mental fitness is your ability to remain in a neutral to positive physiological state for the vast majority of your day, regardless of what gets thrown at you. And what that means is you're not reactive, you're not triggered, you're not threatened, you're not going up and down and in and out of fight and flight responses. You're measured. You have full capacity of your brain. That's what it means.
Full capacity of your brain. Now, I'm going to be a little bit silly here, but that seems like a pretty high bar. But the rest of that, I think it's great. One of the things I love about the definition is I think you said the vast majority of the day. Like,
Yeah.
how do there are people here, I'm betting. My wife said last night that I'm type A. My team can go in the chat and say if I am or not. I don't know. But there are probably people here for whom that have very high standards for themselves.
Okay.
How talk to those people, which I'm guessing is at least some of the 102 people that are here at this moment, about this idea of vast majority of the time? Because are there some of us that are setting ourselves up to fail around mental fitness because of that various point?
No. Here's what it's pretty interesting. The average American and even the average leader spends 80% of their day in what I call a catabolic state, just negative mood state. 80% of your day. You are thinking thoughts repeatedly that are self-sabotaging, that are getting in the way of your performance. And on average, we're thinking 50,000 thoughts a day. Today, you're going to think those 50,000 thoughts and they're going to be the exact same thoughts that you thought yesterday and the day before and the day before, and they are primarily negative. How can you possibly optimize your performance when you're in those states? You can't.
Yeah, it's not possible.
It's not
80%
possible.
of the time. So you called that a catabolic state. In the book, you talk about the difference between a catabolic state and an anabolic state. So you want to just talk about that difference? That wasn't in my list of questions, but I think it makes
Yeah.
sense given that you brought
Yeah.
that up in that way.
So a catabolic state is when you are triggered, you're threatened, you're going into a state of fight or flight. Your amygdala is triggered and you're losing capacity. Your sight gets narrowed, your thinking gets narrowed. You lose up to 40 IQ points in those states, and we live in those states primarily. Anabolic states are the opposite. It's where we should be most of the day, where we're just neutral or we're positive. And then we can receive information better. We can think more effectively. And of course, you can lead more powerfully because you're actually in control. You're not losing capacity.
Got it. Sorry, I was getting a note from the member of my team. I'm doing what we're not supposed to do, which is multitask, but that's just the nature of this particular day for me.
Yeah.
When you were when we were talking about mental fitness and we
Yeah.
talked a little bit in the open before you joined us, one of the things that I love about the way you frame it is that you talk about it as both choices and skills. So tell us more about that, and let's talk about each, because I'm so glad that it played out that you were the first guest today, because I think you set the table for everything else that follows so very, very well. Talk about the choices around how we can improve our mental fitness as well as the skills.
Yeah. So let me, I think it's what would be helpful is to just walk you through the 5 muscles very quickly. And these are the muscles of mental fitness that you need to build self-awareness, to build resilience, emotional intelligence. Um, and they are basically self-awareness. The most important muscle is always self-awareness and mindfulness. And the reason that is because if you're not self-aware, you can't change. And 95% of people think they're self-aware, Kevin, and only 10 to 15% actually are. So we're
Yeah.
delusional. Even people with high emotional intelligence that come in do not have it. When I'm working with them. The second most important muscle is personal accountability. Now, this is a choice. In my definition, I have a high bar for accountability. It means you're taking accountability for your thoughts, for your moods, for your behaviors, and for your outcomes. You're not blaming others, you're not blaming circumstances. And you might be thinking, or the audience might be thinking, wait a minute, come on, how can I be accountable for my moods? They just happen, moods happen. But actually, you're creating your moods by the thoughts you think. And it's important to learn that because most of the emotional pain that you experience comes from the conversations that you're having with yourself. It's not the actual event outside of you that affects you, it's what you're saying to yourself. And then the third muscle is just developing the ability to see multiple perspectives and viewpoints, to not be so rigid. To have empathy, see things from other perspectives, and align with that muscle is number 4, choosing the right lens, knowing what lens to apply in a given situation. And by lens, I mean viewpoint, perspective, attitude, bias, what you're bringing into the room or into the situation. And then the last muscle is just learning to apply deep diaphragmatic breathing when you're faced with stressful situation, because research shows it's the quickest way for you to get out of a triggered state. You can't think your way out faster. Breathing will get you out the quickest. And the quickest you can get out is 6 seconds.
So I wish, you know what I wish right now, Jody, that my
What?
daughter, my 23-year-old daughter was here. Why? Because from the time she was, I don't know, 1, when she would cry, I'd say, Kelsey, take a deep breath, take a deep breath, take 3 deep breaths. We can send her the replay, Marissa says. Marissa, for those of you who don't know, is her sister-in-law because Marissa is my daughter-in-law. That breathing thing is so important.
So
Right. I
key.
love that. And we're going to spend a bunch of time on the the lens piece, because that's one of the areas I want us to focus on today.
Great.
So those 5 things are the muscles, and you hinted at both choices and skills as you went through them, right? But before we get back to choices and skills, and you wanted to lay this on top, which I'm glad that you did. I want to go back to the self-awareness one, because
Yeah.
I've read the
Yeah.
same research that you've read that says, man, most of us think we are far more self-aware than we actually are. So, like, how do we work on that?
Okay, let's start right now. So, everyone in the audience, what are you feeling right now? Just take
Do
a
you want them
moment.
to say it in the chat or not? I guess they don't have to. They may
Well,
not want to.
you can, but I want you to just go in and just go inside and say, what am I feeling right now? What is my mood? And I'm asking you to do that because most people can't identify their mood. And if they can, they have a very limited vocabulary. So I have people that just say, I'm in a good mood. By the way, good and bad, they're not moods, right? But that's their definition of like, oh, I'm in a good mood, I'm in a bad mood. Or they have very rudimentary capacity to articulate their moods. They're happy, they're sad, they're mad. And you have to build your vocabulary to build your emotional intelligence, to be self aware, and then to be able to be mindful in the moment when you're feeling it. And here's why I start here, because this is like the foundation. There's 2 foundations to change here, and there's self-awareness and mindfulness. And when you want to learn anything fundamentally, let's say you want to learn basketball, there's 2 fundamental skills you need to learn: it, dribbling and shooting. You know, all the other stuff is on top of it. And with emotional intelligence and resilience, it's absolutely self-awareness and mindfulness. You start with the moods because they're easier, and then you progress and start to ask yourself, how did I create that mood? What was the thought I thought that created the mood? And it is not what just happened. And that's a hard concept for people to get.
So I love that. So I think I got the question. I was ready to. I opened the question that's down below, and it's pretty much what I just asked. So Olivia, let me know if we got that. If we didn't, we'll give us a follow up. So you've sort of started to say that about the mindfulness and self-awareness around building the skill, but in the rest of them, and knowing that I'm going to take us into the lenses a little bit more later. What
Sure.
else do you want to say to us about, as we're kicking off a day talking about mental fitness, about the skills of building or choosing to be mentally fit?
Well, I would love to walk you through my mind mastery process. And this is here's I don't see any books that do this. You know, people try to build emotional intelligence or mental fitness and they're confused. It's a soft skill, it's amorphous. It's like, how do I do this? Especially technologists, linear thinkers. This is very, very hard for people. I created a step-by-step process that I have used for over 20 years. I've brought into over 40,000 one-on-one coaching sessions with top leaders. And I call this process mind mastery. And it is going to rewire your brain by disrupting your old habitual patterns. And that means, for example, let me give you just an example so this makes sense. It means like you'll be in control and you'll react calmly to a work email that would have once set you off and ruined your day. That's what we're going for. And here's how you do it. And remember this, it's a 2-part phrase. It's a mnemonic. It's simple to remember. The first part is ABC, and it stands for A, assess the moods and thoughts you created when you were triggered. That's what you want to do. And then B, breathe. And you do this simultaneously. Deeply breathe for 6 seconds from your diaphragm, deeply in your belly. Your belly's going out to calm yourself. And then finally, C, choose to be accountable for your moods. Choose to be accountable. It's one of the 2 chooses, right? Choose to be accountable for your moods, your thoughts, your behaviors, and what happens as a result. And the second part is C, SEE. And that stands for, now that you have gotten stable, because you need to get stable first. If you're still triggered, you can't do the second part of this SEE. And S stands for spot what I call the current lens. What is your viewpoint or your perspective that's driven by your underlying core beliefs and causing you distress? And then E, explore other lenses, other perspectives by being curious, flexible, open. And finally, E, elect a lens or a perspective that will allow you to perform at your best in any given situation.
So as you can see, everybody, there's a bunch of stuff about the lenses there, and that's why I want to spend more time with everybody there.
Yep.
Before we, or as we go there, Jody, what would you describe as some of the helpful lenses? Helpful
A helpful
perspectives that we
lens
can look at
is,
things through.
yeah. So anything, a helpful perspective is simply this. It's going to be different for every person. It is a lens or perspective that is in alignment with you being successful, not getting in the way, not impeding you, versus an impeding lens. This is where you're self-sabotaging yourself. This is where you're working against yourself. So, for example, can I give you a quick example, Kevin?
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so let's say I get a client. Let's say I get a mandated client. They don't want to be with me. And this happens sometimes,
They've
the
been
leader that,
voluntold. You're going to
yeah.
get coaching.
Yeah, right. And they're sent to me and it's mandated. They don't want to be there, right? And early in our process, maybe the first session, they say, hey, people can't change. Okay, now that is a lens. That is a powerful lens. And what they're really saying to me is, I can't change. That's what they're saying. Now, in that process of bringing that to our first session, they're sabotaging their possibility for success. Success isn't going to happen. They're
100%.
sabotaging our engagement,
We
right?
got
Yeah.
no shot at this moment.
No, because beliefs are so powerful. So I, as an executive coach, have to figure out a way to break through that defense system. And I'll tell you, facts don't work. As you well know, beliefs are far more powerful than facts. So you can give them facts and say that's not true. The brain has endless possibility to change, to grow, to build, all that. They don't care. They don't believe it. So
Can't teach an old dog new tricks. Come on, Jody. What are you talking about? I have never been in this coaching situation before, Jody, so I don't know.
You're funny. But yeah, so the trick is, a masterful coach is going to find a way to make this meaningful for that person so they're engaged and they want it, or it's not going to work. But that would be an example of the lens getting in the way. And we have a lot of these. And by the way, they're indoctrinated in us very young, in our childhood, in our family of origin, in the experience, the traumas we've had, both big and small, and we're blind to it. We're just operating. We're robotic. 90% of what you're doing day in and day out is exactly the same. You're not thinking about it.
Routine and automatic. And while we want and need that, we wouldn't be able to survive if we didn't have that. We have to be self-aware enough to go back and look to say, is that serving me? How is that serving me or not? Right. So
Yes.
we're using the word lens. And I just want to ask a question that I'm guessing someone's thinking. When we say lens, or when you say lens, is that the same or different from a mindset? And if it's different, how?
It's the same. I like lens for some reason, but and I call it perceptual lenses, how you're seeing the world. But it's kind of akin to putting on glasses in the morning. If you think about it this way, if you put on, let's say, blue tinted contact lenses, and you were really seeing everything blue, and you're walking around, and Kevin, you and I are walking, and I go, oh my God, look at that beautiful evergreen. I love that green. And you go, green, it's blue. And it really is blue to you. You are actually seeing blue. You forgot you had a lens that was tinted.
Yeah. So you said that we've got lots of lenses and we put many of them on without thinking. And part of what you're suggesting to help us be more mentally fit is to help to use other lenses and then pick more helpful perceptional lenses. So how do we make the switch? Like, we know now, hey, I don't want to see all blue, so I'm going to take off these contacts or take off these glasses. But it's not tangible like that. Like, let's just take off the glasses and see differently.
Right.
But so how do we select different ones? First of all, we have to be self-aware enough to know that we could and that there are choices. But once we get past that, how do we actually do that selection of something that might be more helpful to us?
Well, the most important thing is to know what you want to change. So you have to get underneath your operating system, under the hood, so to speak, to really start to understand what are some belief systems you have. I'll share one that I had very early. I had a belief that there's not enough, because I grew up in a family that there wasn't enough. There wasn't enough money. There wasn't enough really to survive or thrive. And so very early on, what I did was, when I graduated from college, I saved money unbelievably. You would be so proud of me, Kevin, if I was your daughter. I was just ridiculous. But let me tell you how that didn't serve me. When I first got on the trading floor at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, and I started to meet these men, I noticed a wild difference between the men who were very successful and the men that were the small guys, right? Not so successful. And one of the things that I understood is the people that had a lot of money, money was almost energy flow, comes in, comes out. They're not hoarding it. There's no scarcity about it. And so what I did at a very early age is I decided I have to build this belief system because it's so deep in me that there's not enough. How do I do this? And so what I would do is, I did this for months. I would bring a bunch of $20 bills, and every time I saw a homeless person, which was often in those days, I would walk over to them and I handed them $20, and it would kill me. It would kill me to do this. But after months of doing this and really giving away hundreds and hundreds, maybe even thousands of dollars, I finally felt like, oh, I have enough. I can share it with you. And it started to build on a deep level. There is enough. Look at this. You're throwing money away, but you
Well,
still have enough.
if you're in the scarcity mentality, you are throwing money
Yes.
away, right?
Yes. Yes. So that's what it is. But first of all, you have to understand what are the belief systems, the attitude perspectives that are getting in your way. What are you saying to yourself? And how you're going to figure this out is by hearing your thoughts, hearing what you're saying to yourself. We don't hear our thoughts. And we're having 50,000 of them a day. We don't hear them. And most of them are repetitive. So we're really not hearing them.
So what we're doing is reinforcing those, right? And we're just reinforcing them, and we're building them stronger and stronger and stronger. And if we never are self-aware or mindful of them, then they just become more and more a part of literally who we are, right?
Yeah.
So you tell a story in the book that relates to when you were a trader that I think is really interesting. And it's not exactly in that part of the book, but I'm going to set this up and then I'm going to smile. So one day you stole a coat at the office.
Thanks,
So
Kevin. Thanks.
Well, everybody, she really didn't steal the coat. She'll probably fill you in on that. But
I'll
I'd like you to tell
rationalize
that
that
story
stealing. Yes.
because I think it relates to what we're just talking about, and it
Yeah.
gets at this idea of how hard we have to work at changing some of those lenses.
There's no question. There, on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, you could identify people by the color of their coats. And the coats that were red were the traders. And that's what I wanted to be, a trader. And they would also just throw them, you'd get them washed. You just bring them down, throw them in the Mercantile Exchange would wash them for you, right? So they're not really stolen. You just throw them away, right? And you get a new one. So one day some trader left their red coat, and I took it home. I washed it. I put a trading badge on. And every day after work, I would not only visualize myself trading, I would faux trade. I would put myself into that state of, I am a trader already, and this is how it's going to feel. This is how I am going to perform, etc., etc. I got to tell you, I started this. You often ask about pivotal moments in a journey, right?
Yep.
And I was thinking about that. I thought, what are those pivotal moments? And one of mine, my first one really was very young. I remember being like 6 or 7 years old. My house was filled with chaos, trauma. And I remember vividly saying something akin to, I'm screwed. I need to figure out how to raise myself if I'm going to be okay. So I started to intentionally watch sitcoms and movies, not for entertainment like most kids, kind of to pull out life lessons. I started to become an acute observer of others. I became obsessed with performance because I thought that's my ticket out. I started reading psychology textbooks in 7th grade so I could understand myself better and others. And this is key, that difficult childhood actually gave me the gift of becoming emotionally intelligent at a very young age. It also gave me the gift of indoctrinating belief systems already young that were outside of my family dynamic. So without even realizing it at the time, I was building capacity to be a future coach, right? And
Yeah.
already starting to design and create myself. And this is what I want to inspire people to do. And it's not too late.
I love that. So we've got the question has come in. It was in the chat, and it's been moved into the Q&A about, can you give us the definition of mental fitness again? Someone wants that again. So can you do that? And then it's so
Absolutely.
interesting. Before you do that, it's so interesting to me that we never met before this.
Yes.
I've read your book and
Oh,
most all of
thank
it.
you.
And
Yeah.
well, obviously I knew the red jacket story. I had to have read at least some of it, right? But anyway,
Right.
it's interesting to me how much where you're taking us is tracking with the things I wanted to ask. So that says that we're heading in a good direction. So
We're in
can you give
sync.
that definition again? And then I want to move it forward.
Absolutely. And I just want to tell you, with this definition, I wanted it measurable. You could actually measure this. If we had a functional MRI machine with us day in and day out, we could measure it. And they are actually working on software. I think it's Stanford and MIT that I'm going to partner, attached to, right, my app, so that you can be conscious of when you are in a mentally fit state or not. But here's the definition. Mental fitness is your ability to remain in a neutral to positive physiological state for the vast majority of your day, regardless of what the day is throwing at you. That's my definition.
Vast majority of the time, regardless of
Yes.
what's going on around you, what the
Yeah.
world is throwing at you. So I love that. Thank you. You just mentioned an app. Why don't you talk
Yeah.
about that for just a second?
Yeah, it is called Mind Mastery for Mental Fitness. It has been out since we designed it in 2012. And I designed it because I kept failing as I was building this model. It was too cumbersome, it was too big. And I kept refining it. And once an app came out, 10 years ago, I was like, oh my God, this is brilliant. And so what this app does, and it's free, the first half of the app is free. It's going to help you build your mental fitness by helping you build your self-awareness and mindfulness. And here's what's going to happen. It's going to come at you 8 times a day randomly. That's important because you'll learn faster. And it's going to ask you, what's your mood? Are you in an
You can't
antibody?
just say good or bad, everybody. You've already learned that this morning.
You can't. You can't. And it's going to ask you, what thought created that mood state? And you're going to get there exponentially faster because you don't have to remember to be self-aware. I'm coming at you. You just need to respond, and it'll take you 30 seconds to a minute to do this.
Yeah, it's building your skill of being more self-aware, which is so
Yes.
incredibly powerful. And the links are over there, everybody, on the side. Whether you're a Apple person or an Android person, you can take your pick over there.
And you know what I want people to understand? There's an analogy I make in the book, and this really helps people. Building your mental fitness is like building physical fitness. It's the same components. We don't think that way. We're obsessed with physical fitness, not mental fitness. But think about when you're building physical fitness. You're working your muscles. You have to make sure you get enough reps in. You have to have enough intensity, and you got to do it consistently long enough, and you'll build physical fitness. Same thing with mental fitness. You've got to work these 5 muscles of mental fitness. You got to do it with enough reps every day, enough intensity for a long enough period of time, and you will build your neurological system. You will physiologically change your brain, and you'll have the 2.0 version of you. It's powerful because
That would be
you built your brain haphazardly to date, but now you can intentionally rebuild your software, so to speak. And
yeah.
that's
So
powerful.
I was about ready to say that you framed the 5 keys as muscles, right?
Mhm.
And so that helps us with, and what you didn't know is that we had already made the comment about physical fitness and mental fitness and hooked them together. And then you give us 5 muscles to think about, right? And we've been talking about each of those a little bit as we go. And then one of the things I wanted to ask you about is, how does this all connected to EQ or emotional intelligence? And then the follow up to that is, well, I'll ask them one at a time. How is this all connected? Everything we've been talking about, how is it connected to our emotional intelligence?
It is emotional intelligence. I'm just breaking it down for you because you're building emotional intelligence. You're building that self-awareness, that mindfulness. And once you have that, you have capacity to now build other awareness, environmental awareness, because you're programmed differently. You're not triggered where you're in your own head and self-absorbed.
Gotcha. I'm
Yeah.
looking at the clock and realizing I've got a bunch more questions than I have time to ask you. But the book is actually titled Leading Lightly. And so, our publishers always say, well, what is this book about? And it's a leadership book. So, what's the lesson for us here as leaders in relationship to the stuff that we've been talking about?
Look, I think it's a wake-up call. The book is a wake-up call. It's showing you how you are unwittingly sabotaging yourself, your performance, how you're making your days harder, more painful than they need to be, simply because you haven't built the level of mental fitness and emotional intelligence that you need to become Teflon. And when you're in states that are not positive, when you're stressed, you're overwhelmed, you're burnt out, you're anxious, when you're in those states, you're impaired, you can't perform your best. And that's what executive coaching is all about, optimizing your performance. So this is foundational.
I'm holding it up again because Carmen's asking. Leading Lightly. Subtitle: Lower your stress, think with clarity, and lead with ease. Does that give you what you need, Carmen? And so there you go. Leading Lightly. Exactly. So we're 32 minutes in. We got about
Okay.
3.5 minutes left. Here's my question. What didn't I ask that you wish I would have?
What are people going to get out of this book? I mean, what are they tangibly going to get out if they work the book? I think that.
So go ahead, answer that question.
All right. It's going to enable you to pivot very quickly out of triggered emotional states. And I mean within seconds or minutes. You're not going to ruminate. You're not going to spend hours or days. It's going to enable you to respond instead of always reacting to situation. And that makes a huge difference. It's going to have you feel lighter, feel more in control. Events are going to stop rattling you. You're going to have more energy at the end of the day to be with your family. You're going to be able to respond to situations consciously. You'll be a more conscious leader, more present, aware of yourself and others. And really, this book is a roadmap for building your self-awareness, your mindfulness, your resilience, and your emotional intelligence. And I want you to know the strongest driver of results is what you're thinking and your mood state. We don't link that up with performance, but that is 90% of the results you get in life are based on what you think and how you feel. That's powerful.
That is really powerful. So, um, it's interesting for me to ask a question. This question, I plan to ask everybody this question today, given where our conversation has gone. But what's one thing that you do regularly, intentionally, to help with your own mental fitness?
I manage my breathing. Whenever I notice I get triggered, it's the easiest, fastest way. And it in seconds, you feel differently. in seconds. So deep diaphragmatic breathing is key to just bringing yourself back in control and weakening the amygdala, which is having you triggered, and re-engaging your prefrontal cortex, which is your executive functioning. It's when you're smart, So that is the thing I probably do, even unconsciously, just habitually.
I don't know if you all caught this, but she said when we're living in that catabolic state, we could lose 40 IQ points. I just got to tell you all, I can't afford to lose 40. I can't afford to lose 4. Just saying. So anything else that you want to say, tell us, share before we go? We're giving people links, and it's been over here in the chat. All the links to your book, your app, and all that stuff for you and all the other speakers is all on that resources page. So we've got all that for people. What else do you want people to know, do,
Yeah. Well, I would love the takeaway for anybody that reads the book. It would just delight me if they walked away from reading the book realizing the biggest return on investment of your time, of your focus, is doing the work from the inside out. You're going to have bigger change, systemic change, real change. And once you build that, it takes no effort at all. You're just, again, your 2.0 self.
There you go. 2.0 self, everybody. And so I think that puts us, they are ready. Beautiful. Okay. So our next guests are ready. But before we go to them, Jody, I want to thank you for joining us today and for sharing your insights and your ideas and your own journey, because I think all of that has made this more powerful and more valuable. And I appreciate both that and your time and everything.
Thank you, Kevin. It was a delight to be here.